So, DLC seems to be the hotbed of contention in the video game industry in 2015, 2016, in fact, all the 2000s, because people just hate the concept. But not just hate the concept. That's unfair. It's actually more fair to say, and I quote, "I should be given everything for free because developers aren't entitled to jack shit." And if you think that sounds like an asshole thing to say, I'm not the one who fucking said it. I've just had that said to me about 500 fucking times. That developers should develop DLC for free if they want to release it. And if they don't want to sell it for free, then they're accused of breaking up a game and then selling it back to the consumer for more profit than the game is actually worth. And maybe that's true. I don't know. What I do know is that a lot has changed in the video game industry since the 1990s when I started growing up and playing them. For starters, Sonic the Hedgehog was my first game ever, was on a cartridge. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog had one of the earlier forms of DLC. I can't say whether it was the first form, but basically, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was supposed to originally have Knuckles in it, but they didn't release it like that because they couldn't fit it on the disc at the time. So when Sonic and Knuckles later came out, one of my favorite Sonic games, it had a drive at the top of it to plug in the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and play Knuckles in it. That was DLC back then. That was as close to DLC as you could fucking get. Nowadays, you have Xbox Live and PSN, and these things are constantly updating, giving the developers the ability to make more content for the game and then release it at a later date. Now, there are a few games that have come out that have utterly and absolutely taken advantage of the player and the purchaser of the game. 95% of people bitching about DLC have never played those fucking games, so they can fuck off. The one I'm thinking of is Ridge Racer Vita. Ridge Racer Vita launched for the PlayStation Vita when the Vita first launched, and it was released for $40, which is the average price for a Vita game. It was released with 2 cars and 1 track that could go both forward, the normal route around it, or the reverse route. Literally everything else in that game was purchasable. You had to purchase everything. There was no unlocking scheme. Everything was locked behind a paywall. So you bought basically nothing for $40. Now, those games do exist. To deny that would be utter bullshit. I mean, some people can accuse Dota of doing the same thing, MOBAs, where, like, for instance, League of Legends has a ton of champions, but you have to either get the points to unlock them or just pay to unlock them. But even they have an unlock scheme. But we're not going to talk about those because that's a whole other complicated, convoluted thing. Instead, we're just going to talk about games that have DLC. Because here's the thing. Most of the people that bitch about DLC are the COD players. They bitch about it on a regular basis. And when a Call of Duty is involved, I kind of tend to agree with them. Call of Duty makes an ungodly amount of money. In fact, they make more fucking money than anybody else. They shouldn't be making the amount of money each and every year that they are making, and yet they tend to make it. My point being that yes, when you are making that level of money, there is no fucking reason why every single little teeny tiny aspect of your game is locked behind a paywall. Something to be purchased. And then in other games, there are very weird ways to cash in on the player. For instance, Mortal Kombat X has quick fatalities, which are just 2 button pushes to do the more complicated button press fatality moves. Those have X amount that you're given, and then as you progress through the game, through this side thing that unlocks a bunch of other stuff, you can unlock more. But you can also purchase them so that you can do them quickly. Yeah, that's weird. It's not necessarily conning the player, because obviously the player can unlock those on his own, and if the player actually spends enough time in the game to get good at it, the fatalities are not really that hard, all things considered. But that's another way that players get marketed to. But for the most part, 95% of games do not con the player out of money and do not sell them a broken or unfinished product. Now, this is not including games like Assassin's Creed Unity, which are just broken as in glitchy. When I say broken, I mean broken apart. That content is physically missing from a game with the intention of being sold back to you later. First of all, 95% of DLC is not done when the game is done. They're still working on it. They have constant updates to fix and finish DLC. DLC is not something that's just done when the game is done. They lock in a vault and say, okay, let's all go on our way until we have to release this stuff. No, that's not how it works. Though a lot of people would think it is. But they're putting time, effort, and a lot of man hours into finishing these products, whether they be DLC or the game. So for both of them, they're entitled to their money, because we live in a commerce society where we exchange goods and services for finances. And the fact that they're putting time and effort into making something means that they're entitled to money. Now, the cost of video games is consistently going up, and the cost gamers are willing to pay for said game is consistently staying right about the same. Now, I'm not saying that $60 isn't a fair price for a video game. And arguably, again, games like Call of Duty and even games like Grand Theft Auto, they're making their money back and then some. In fact, CD Projekt Red's The Witcher probably made its money back as well. They also gave free DLC along with their paid DLC. But here's the thing. CD Projekt Red, and more importantly their game The Witcher 3, when everything was tallied up and statistics were coming out for what games sold the most and had the biggest profit this year, they weren't on that list. Metal Gear Solid 5 wasn't on that list either, and those are arguably the two games that were battling it out for Game of the Year. Now, everybody knew The Witcher was going to win, even I did. But my point is, those are two of the best games of the year, and they did not sell as much as fucking Call of Duty did, as much as Assassin's Creed and Syndicate did. These companies need to recoup money so that they can continue making the high-level quality games that they are making. Now, with Metal Gear Solid, Konami can go fuck themselves, right up their fucking asses, and Kojima's off on his own now, so it really doesn't matter. But DLC is a way to A, keep players' interest in a game, and B, make more money on the game that is going to go into future projects. Now, yeah, a lot of that money is also going to go to pay employees, but employees deserve to get paid. They have wives, kids, they have families, apartments, cost of living. These are things that everybody in this country is entitled to. So, of course, the people making your games deserve those as much as everybody else. But a lot of that money is also going to go to completing future projects. In fact, paying employees can arguably be labeled right under there. So ignore everything I just said. But I've heard so many people say, DLC should be free. I shouldn't have to fucking pay again. I already bought your $60 game. Why the fuck shouldn't you have to pay again? Say I hire you for a job. You're doing that job that I hired you for. Then I have you run around and do a bunch of other shit that doesn't have anything to do with the job I hired you for. You end up working 4 hours over schedule. And then when it comes time to pay you, I pay you the money for the time you should have been working. That 4 hours extra I don't give you. But you say, well, I'm supposed to get paid X amount for overtime. And I say, no, well, fuck you. I'm entitled to that time. I hired you. I'm entitled to your overtime. Fuck you. Would you get pissed off? Because that's the exact same thing. Video game developers are spending time and effort, even on DLC, even on extra skin sets. And they're entitled to money back. In fact, a great show to watch to understand commerce would be Shark Tank, where people often talk about what's the cost to make and what's the cost you get once selling the product. Which is oftentimes, I make it for $20, I sell it for $59.99. Now that might sound outrageous to you, but why should you sell a product at the same price it cost to make it? Because then you get a $0 profit. So what was the fucking point of doing it in the first place? And if you're so entitled to it, why don't you go out and do it yourself? Why don't you go out and make your favorite video game yourself and then not pay anybody for it? But then, of course, you'll get sued for copyright infringement because they own the game. The point is, DLC is a way to continuing interest in a project. It helps us continue to enjoy the game that we're enjoying long after we've beaten the main storyline. Because the thing is, back in the day, N64, Sega, once you beat the game was done. You've experienced it. Now, some games had really cool side stuff you could do, but not a lot, not as many as today. And even a 20-hour game, hell, even a 10-hour game is fucking more content than 95% of games back in the cartridge generation. But everybody is so fucking caught up in the old school. How gaming used to be. I see this meme all the fucking time of a hamburger being sold and, oh, yeah, this hamburger is the main game, and then these fries over here, and oh, this soda over here, they're the expansion packs. And then gaming now, they take apart the entire burger. Oh yeah, this is DLC, this is DLC, this is the GameStop pre-order bonus, this is Best Buy pre-order bonus. Go fuck yourself. And while we're on the topic of pre-order bonuses, they often offer nothing. Usually just a fucking skin. And you want to know what my fucking argument to that is? Pre-order the fucking game, jackass. Seriously. Like, if you care so much about getting that content, there's an easy way to get it for fucking free. Pre-order the goddamn game. Usually it's released for like a small amount of money anyway, but 95% of the time it doesn't offer anything to the game. And if it's an extra fucking mission and you want it, then just fucking pre-order the game, because 95% of reviews come out before you're expected to pick up that game anyway. If you're so on the fucking fence about it, you can cancel the pre-order and you can get all your money back and you can shut the fuck up. 95% of the games are not bare-boned like people always try to fucking make it sound. But yeah, you're right. It does look bare-boned compared to the fact that when you buy the DLC, there's a lot more content, I guess, is the moral to that. But even games like Fallout and The Witcher have value equivalent to games like Sleeping Dogs and Grand Theft Auto and Uncharted and Until Dawn, because they're all focusing on different aspects of this game, but they're sinking hours into those different aspects to get those aspects, the ones that matter the most, perfect. In a fighting game, you have to program every single move set into a character. Then you have to give that character animation for every single move set that is in that character. That's a lot of time, a lot of effort. Uncharted, you have to make the climbing mechanics look believable. When shit's blowing up, you have to make the character's movements to avoid it look believable. If they're getting knocked back, it needs to look believable. You need to put the effort into the different aspects of the game that make it that game. For instance, watching the characters talk in Uncharted, a lot more enjoyable than watching the characters talk in Fallout. Sorry, it's just a fact. But they put the time and the effort into facial animations in Fallout because that is such an important aspect of that game. And it is not a simple feat to accomplish. They don't put the effort into that in Fallout because the facial things don't really matter as much. The exploration of the world and interacting with all the different people in the game, that's what matters the most. So on these levels, these games are equated. Just because one is shorter doesn't mean it is bare-boned compared to the other one. It's all about the different experience, and DLC is often a way to continue that experience long after the game has ended. But, you know, like everything else, gamers have to fucking ruin it. Well, anyway, that's my show for today. Like, subscribe, or don't if you're pissed off at me. I wouldn't blame you, but you're an asshole. So, hopefully there'll be more content coming up soon. I hope you enjoyed.